Hello everybody, this is Yasmin from Yarkspiri fantasyart.com. Today I have a little surprise for you guys. If you found this video, first of all, congratulations. I decided to hide this one because, well, I like treasure hunts, so I figured it might be a good idea to include them every so often in some of my videos. And since this one was part of a series, I thought you guys might like it. Now in this case, what I did is I took all my previous drawings that I had done, so the initial illustration, the muscle anatomy, the skeletal anatomy, and added some additional effects into the mix. I did have a plan to do this in the beginning, which is the only reason why this actually kind of worked out. What was involved is I did a pre-planning of what I would need effects-wise and how I would do that. So I did some rough sketches. I also looked at a little bit of reference, not too much. Normally I do look at a lot more reference, given that effects is not technically my specialty. And I also wanted to test out the limits of Adobe Premiere and Photoshop. So this was all entirely done with Adobe Premiere and Photoshop combined. So the effects itself were drawn out in Photoshop. I did try some of the animation features in Photoshop, but didn't have enough control over the layers switching, so because of that I brought it into Adobe Premiere. Now, because all these frames are really short in order to give this effect, it made for a very large file size, so I pretty much maxed out my computer trying to do this. I think next time I'll try definitely using Flash, which is better suited for something like this. But it did give me some pretty cool effects because I did use Photoshop. So once I had my muscle anatomy and my skeletal anatomy, what I had to do is I had to plan out how the energy was actually going to go through the body. I did have to plan out how the energy was actually going to move through the body. So for this, I drew out in Photoshop veins. So I did reference the veins and artery system. I did make a lot of it up, however, because if he's using he has electrical currents going through him, it's probably not going to be realistic anyway. So that being said, I did use some artistic license when deciding how I was going to do the veins and arteries. One thing I did want to focus on, though, is that the center of his core was what was powering all of his powers. So I did make sure to draw a really rough heart-like shape. And by doing that, it gave me a really nice effect. So once I had the veins and artery systems planned out, I started working on the effects that I was going to include on the swords. So I did want it to look like electricity, at least somewhat like electricity. So what I did is I just used the basic round brush to draw out electrical currents. And I only have about 3 frames to simulate the electrical currents. You don't need too many because electricity is moving really fast. And because it moves so fast, it would be flashing quickly. So once I had the electricity mapped out, I did decide that the currents just looked too harsh. So they needed to be diffused a bit. I also wanted to show a little bit more energy coming out of his sword. So I added a mist effect, and I had 4 frames for that. So the amount of frames that I used to get this effect were very limited. But although they were very limited, they worked for the piece. Now once I brought this piece into Adobe Premiere, I worked a bit with animating the transparencies for the core of the characters. So the initial illustration of his body, the muscle anatomy, the skeletal anatomy, and the vein and artery system. So by changing the transparency very quickly and slowly and alternating between those, you get a pretty good effect of like literally it coming out of his core. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was really fun for me to create this, and I did learn a lot. And I hope you guys tune into my next video. Take care.